The bridge of the Vorthak flagship Crimson Talon hummed with the sound of alien machinery. Admiral Kethvar stood before the main screen, his scaled hands clasped behind his back. His yellow eyes glowed with satisfaction as he watched the data streaming across the display. The illegal mining operation in the Kepler sector was going perfectly. "Admiral," his communications officer hissed, "we have detected an unknown vessel approaching the mining zone." Kethvar turned, his massive frame casting shadows across the bridge. "What kind of vessel?" "It appears to be human, sir." A low growl escaped from Kethvar's throat. Humans were nothing more than a minor species to him. They had only been in space for a few centuries, barely worth noticing. "How many ships?" "Just one, Admiral. A small science vessel." Kethvar laughed, a harsh sound that made his crew shift nervously. One ship? What threat could one human ship possibly pose? Far across the void, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Aurora's Dream, studying the strange energy readings on his screen. His brown hair was slightly messy from running his hands through it, a habit he had when concentrating. The science vessel was small compared to military ships, but it was his home, and he loved every bolt and wire of it. "Amy, are you seeing this?" he called to his second-in-command. Lieutenant Amy Collins looked up from her station, her blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She had been tracking the energy patterns for the past hour. "The readings are off the charts, Jake. I've never seen anything like this." "Pete, what do you think?" Jake asked the ship's engineer. Pete Rodriguez wiped grease from his hands with a rag. He had been working on the engines all morning, making sure everything ran smoothly. "Whatever's causing those readings is using a lot of power, more than any normal mining operation should need." Jake frowned. They were supposed to be cataloging star systems in this sector, looking for planets that might support life. They weren't expecting to find any signs of civilization, especially not in a protected area like this. "Amy, can you intercept any communications?" Amy's fingers flew over her console. After a few minutes, she looked up with concern. "Jake, you need to hear this." She played back the intercepted transmission. The alien voices were harsh and guttural, but the translation software worked quickly. Jake's face grew pale as he listened. "They're talking about illegal gravitonium mining," Amy whispered. "This whole operation is against galactic law. They're stealing resources from a protected system." Jake felt his stomach drop. Gravitonium was one of the most valuable substances in the galaxy. It was used to power faster-than-light engines and was strictly controlled. If the Vorthak Empire was mining it illegally, it could shift the balance of power in this part of space. "We have to report this to Earth Command," Jake said firmly. "But Jake," Pete said nervously, "if they know we heard this." Jake nodded grimly. "I know. But this information is too important. People need to know what's happening here." On the Crimson Talon, the communications officer was becoming more agitated. "Admiral, the human vessel has intercepted our communications. They know about the mining operation." Kethvar's eyes blazed with anger. "What? How is that possible?" "Human technology is more advanced than we estimated, sir. Their sensors picked up our encrypted channels." Sub-Commander Zexhai, Kethvar's tactical officer, stepped forward. He was smaller than the Admiral but known for his careful thinking. "Sir, perhaps we should simply warn them off. Send a message telling them to leave the sector." Kethvar's claws extended in rage. "Warn them? These pathetic humans have discovered our operation. They could report us to the Galactic Council." "But, Admiral," Zexhai said carefully, "there is the first galactic law to consider." The bridge fell silent. Every Vorthak knew the ancient law that had been passed down from the time of the precursors. It was simple, but absolute. Never chase a human. Kethvar snarled. "That old superstition? The precursors have been gone for thousands of years. Their laws mean nothing now. Sir, the law exists for a reason." "Silence," Kethvar roared. "I will not be lectured about primitive fears. Humans are weak. They have no great fleets, no powerful weapons. One small science ship will be easily destroyed." Zexhai tried again. "Admiral, every species in the galaxy knows this law. Even the warlike Thexani followed it before they disappeared." Perhaps we should... I said silence. Kethavar's voice echoed through the bridge. Prepare the fleet for pursuit. We will eliminate this human vessel before it can report what it has seen. Yes, Admiral, Zexai replied, but his voice was filled with doubt. On the Aurora's Dream, Jake was making rapid calculations. Amy, how long before we can jump to faster than light? The engines need 15 more minutes to charge, she replied, checking her instruments. We don't have 15 minutes, Pete said grimly. He was looking at the sensor readings. Jake, we've got 6 ships moving toward us. Big ones. Jake felt his heart racing. The Aurora's Dream was a science vessel, not a warship. It had no weapons beyond basic defensive shields. If the Vorthak wanted to destroy them, there was little they could do to fight back. Options? He asked his crew. We could try to hide in the asteroid field, Amy suggested. Too risky, Pete said. Our shields aren't strong enough if we hit something. Jake made his decision. It was the only choice that made sense, even though it went against every diplomatic protocol he had learned. We run, Jake, Amy said quietly. If we run, they'll definitely chase us. I know, Jake replied. But that data we collected is too important. Earth needs to know about this illegal operation. If we try to negotiate or surrender, they'll just destroy us anyway. Pete nodded grimly. The engines are ready. Where do we go? Jake looked at the star chart. Set course for the Terra Nova system. It's the closest human colony. That's 3 jumps away, Amy pointed out. Then we better get started, Jake said. He turned to face his small crew. They were scared, but they trusted him. Everyone hold on. This is going to be a rough ride. The Aurora's Dream turned away from the mining operation and accelerated toward the edge of the system. Behind them, the Vorthak fleet was gaining speed. Admiral Kethvar watched the human ship flee on his main screen. They run like cowards, he said with satisfaction. This will be over quickly. But Zexai was watching his instruments with growing concern. The human ship was moving faster than expected, and their course was unpredictable. Admiral, he said slowly, they're not running in panic. Look at their trajectory. Kethvar studied the display. The human ship was indeed following a calculated course, using the system's gravity wells to increase speed. Clever, he admitted grudgingly. But cleverness will not save them. The chase had begun, and neither side knew that they were about to discover exactly why the first galactic law existed. The Aurora's Dream shot through space like a silver arrow, its engines glowing bright blue as Jake pushed them beyond their normal limits. Behind them, the Vorthak fleet followed like hungry wolves, their dark ships cutting through the void with deadly purpose. First jump complete, Amy announced, her hands steady on the navigation controls despite the danger. We're in the Sigma Centauri system. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead. Status report. 6 ships still following, Pete called from the engine room through the comm system. But I've got bad news. The jump drive is overheating. If we keep pushing like this, we'll burn out the coils. How long can we keep jumping? Jake asked. Maybe 2 more times before we're dead in space. Jake cursed under his breath. 2 more jumps wouldn't get them to human space. He needed to buy more time, but how? The Vorthak ships were faster and stronger than his little science vessel. Jake, Amy said urgently, I'm picking up a solar storm in this system. It's a big one. Jake looked at the display. The local star was having a massive eruption, sending waves of radiation and charged particles across the system. Any sane pilot would avoid it completely. Plot a course through the storm, Jake ordered. Amy stared at him. Jake, that's suicide. The radiation will fry our systems. Not if we're fast enough, Jake said grimly. Pete, reroute all power to the forward shields. Strip it from everything else if you have to. You're crazy, Pete muttered, but his hands were already working on the controls. Shields at maximum forward power. But Jake, this will leave our engines completely exposed. I'm counting on it, Jake said with a tight smile. The Aurora's Dream dove into the solar storm like a bird flying into a hurricane. Radiation levels spiked immediately, and the ship shook as charged particles hammered against the shields. Sparks flew from control panels as systems overloaded. Admiral Kethvar watched in disbelief as the human ship disappeared into the deadly storm. What are they doing? No one can survive in there. Should we follow, Admiral? His pilot asked nervously. Kethvar hesitated. Vorthak ships were built for durability, but even they had limits. The storm was dangerous enough to damage his fleet. Admiral, Zexhai said quietly. Perhaps we should wait for them to exit the storm. They cannot stay in there long. But Kethvar's pride was wounded. How could he explain to his superiors that he had been outsmarted by humans? All ships, maintain pursuit. We follow them in. The Vorthak fleet entered the storm, their shields blazing as radiation tore at their hulls. Two of the smaller ships immediately began experiencing system failures. Inside the storm, Jake was fighting the worst turbulence of his life. The Aurora's Dream bucked and rolled as electromagnetic waves washed over it. Warning alarms screamed. From every station, shields down to 30%, Amy shouted over the noise. Engine temperature critical, Pete reported. We need to get out of here now. Almost through, Jake said through gritted teeth. His hands gripped the controls so tightly his knuckles were white. Flying through the storm was like trying to navigate while blind, relying only on instinct and experience. Suddenly, they burst out of the storm into clear space. Jake immediately changed course, heading for the system's largest gas giant. What happened to the Vorthak? Amy asked, checking her sensors. 2 ships destroyed, she reported. The others are damaged but still following. Jake smiled grimly. The odds were getting better, but they still weren't good enough. Pete, how are the engines? Barely holding together. We've got maybe one more jump in us. Jake studied the gas giant ahead of them. It was huge, with a complex system of moons and rings. Amy, calculate a slingshot trajectory around the planet. Use the gravity to boost our speed. Jake, that's incredibly dangerous. If we get too close to the atmosphere, we'll be pulled in. Then don't get too close, Jake said simply. The Aurora's Dream dove toward the gas giant, its hull heating up as it skimmed the upper atmosphere. The ship's sensors screamed warnings as they fell into the planet's gravity well, building up tremendous speed. At the last possible moment, Jake fired the engines and pulled up, using the planet's gravity like a giant slingshot. The ship shot, away from the planet much faster than before, heading for the edge of the system. The remaining Vorthak ships tried to follow the same maneuver, but their heavier vessels couldn't handle the tight turn. One ship clipped the atmosphere and was dragged down into the gas giant's crushing depths. Another suffered engine failure and was left drifting. 2 ships left, Amy reported with amazement. Admiral Kethvar was furious. Half his fleet was gone, destroyed or disabled by a single human science vessel. How was this possible? Admiral, Zexhai said carefully, perhaps we should reconsider. The humans are proving more resourceful than expected. Never, Kethvar snarled. We will catch them, if it's the last thing we do. The chase continued into the next system, where Jake performed another impossible maneuver. He flew his ship through an active asteroid mining field, weaving between massive rocks and automated mining lasers. The Vorthak ships, built for open, space combat, couldn't match his agility. One more ship was lost when it collided with an asteroid. Now only Admiral Kethvar's flagship remained. We're at the edge of human space, Amy announced as they completed their second jump. One more jump and we'll reach the Terra Nova colony. But Pete's voice from the engine room was grim. I don't think we can make it, Jake. The jump drive is failing. If we try one more jump, we might tear the ship apart. Jake looked at his options. They were so close to safety, but the ship was falling apart around them. Behind them, the Crimson Talon was closing in, its weapons charging. There, Amy said suddenly, pointing at the display. The Titan Nebula, it's only a few hours away at maximum speed. Jake frowned. That nebula is supposed to be impassable. Ships that go in don't come out. It's better than certain death, Amy pointed out. Pete's voice crackled over the comm. Whatever we're going to do, decide fast. The Vorthak ship is gaining on us. Jake made his decision. Throughout this chase, the conventional wisdom had been wrong. The solar storm that should have killed them had hidden them. The gas giant that should have crushed them had sped them up. The asteroid field that should have destroyed them had protected them. Maybe the nebula that everyone said was deadly would be their salvation. "Set course for the Titan Nebula," Jake ordered. "Jake," Amy said quietly, "no one has ever come out of there alive." Jake smiled. "Then I guess we'll be the first." The Aurora's Dream turned toward the swirling clouds of the Titan Nebula, with the last Vorthak ship in close pursuit. Admiral Kethvar watched the human ship heading for what everyone knew was certain death. "They choose to die, rather than surrender," he said with grudging respect. "Should we let them go, Admiral?" Zexhai asked hopefully. Kethvar's eyes glowed with obsession. "No. We follow them in. I will not let them escape." As both ships approached the nebula's edge, neither crew knew they were about to discover secrets that had been hidden for thousands of years. The Titan Nebula loomed before them like a wall of swirling colors. Purple and blue gases twisted together in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Lightning crackled between the clouds, and strange energies made the ship's instruments go wild. "All sensors are useless in there," Amy reported as they approached the nebula's edge. "We'll be flying blind." "Emergency lighting only," Jake ordered. "Shut down everything except life support and engines. We don't want to attract any attention." Pete's voice came through the comm system, sounding worried. "Jake, the electromagnetic interference is incredible. I can barely keep the engines stable." The Aurora's Dream slipped into the nebula like a ghost entering a haunted house. Immediately, the swirling gases surrounded them, blocking out the stars. The ship's hull groaned as strange forces pulled at it from different directions. "It's like flying inside a tornado," Amy whispered, her hands gripping her control panel. Jake had to agree. The nebula felt alive somehow, as if it was watching them. His experience as a test pilot had taught him to trust his instincts when instruments failed, but this was unlike anything he had ever faced. Behind them, the Crimson Talon entered the nebula with typical Vorthak confidence. Admiral Kethvar believed his larger, more powerful ship could handle whatever the nebula threw at them. "Maintain pursuit," he ordered his crew. "The humans cannot have gone far." But within minutes, his confidence began to crack. The nebula was interfering with every system on his ship. Navigation was impossible, weapons were offline, and even basic communications were failing. "Admiral," Zexhai reported nervously, "we're detecting massive objects in the nebula, ship-sized objects." "Other vessels?" Kethvar asked. "Negative, sir. These appear to be wrecks." As if to prove his point, the Crimson Talon passed close to a massive hulk drifting in the gas clouds. It was clearly a ship, but like nothing they had ever seen. The metal was twisted and corroded, and strange symbols covered its hull. "How old is that wreck?" Kethvar asked. "Impossible to determine, Admiral, but the design suggests it's very old, possibly thousands of years." More wrecks appeared as they moved deeper into the nebula. Ships from dozens of different species, all twisted and broken. It was like flying through a graveyard of civilizations. Meanwhile, Jake was having his own problems. The Aurora's Dream was being buffeted by forces that seemed to come from everywhere at once. But his test pilot training was paying off. He had learned to fly by feel when instruments failed, and slowly he was getting a sense of the nebula's rhythms. "There's a pattern to the electromagnetic storms," he told Amy. "They pulse every few minutes. If we time it right, we can ride the calm periods." "Jake," Amy said suddenly, "I'm picking up something on short-range sensors. Something big." Through the swirling gases, a massive structure began to appear. It was clearly artificial, but ancient beyond measure. The structure was made of some kind of dark metal that seemed to absorb light, and it was covered in symbols that glowed with their own inner fire. "What is that thing?" Pete asked, his voice full of wonder. Amy was working frantically at her station, trying to get clear readings through the interference. "It's huge, at least 50 kilometers long, and Jake, it's broadcasting a signal." "What kind of signal?" "It's very weak, but it's been transmitting for a very long time, maybe thousands of years." Jake made a decision that would change everything. "Take us closer." As they approached the ancient structure, they could see that it was not a ship, but some kind of space station or facility. Parts of it were clearly damaged, but the core structure seemed intact. "There," Amy said, pointing at her display. "A docking bay. It looks like it might still be functional." Jake hesitated. Docking with an unknown alien structure was incredibly dangerous. But their ship was failing and they needed time to make repairs. "Do it." The Aurora's Dream carefully moved into the docking bay. To their amazement, the ancient system still worked. Lights came on as they approached, and a force field sealed the bay behind them, creating an atmosphere. "The bay has air," Pete reported with disbelief, "and it's breathable." As they landed, Jake noticed something else. Scattered around the docking bay were other ships. Most were wrecks, but some looked newer. One caught his attention immediately. "Amy, look at that ship over there. Do you recognize the design?" Amy studied it through the viewports. "Jake, that's a Thexani warship. But that's impossible. The Thexani disappeared centuries ago. The Thexani had been one of the most powerful warrior races in the galaxy. They had vanished mysteriously about 300 years ago, leaving behind only legends and empty worlds. Maybe we'll find some answers," Jake said grimly. They put on environmental suits and left their ship to explore. The docking bay was enormous, clearly designed for ships much larger than theirs. The walls were covered in the same glowing symbols they had seen outside. "These symbols," Amy said, studying them through her suit's camera, "I think they might be precursor writing." The precursors were legendary. They were supposed to be the first species to achieve space travel, the ones who had laid down the basic laws that most galactic civilizations still followed, but no one had seen them for thousands of years. They made their way to the Thexani ship. The hull was intact, and they found an airlock that still worked. Inside, they discovered something that made their blood run cold. The ship's crew was still there, but they were all dead. And based on the ship's log, they had died recently. Very recently. "According to this," Amy said, translating the alien text, "they've been trapped in this nebula for 3 years. They came here chasing a human ship." Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. "They broke the first galactic law, too," Amy continued reading. "The last entry says something about the human paradox and warns other Thexani never to chase humans. But Jake, listen to this. They say they found records here. Records that explain why the law exists." "What kind of records?" "Precursor records. About humans." Before Jake could respond, Pete's voice crackled through their comm system. "Jake, you need to get back here. We've got company." Through the force field, they could see the Crimson Talon entering the docking bay. Admiral Kethavar had found them, but something was wrong with the Vorthak ship. It was moving erratically, and parts of its hull were glowing with strange energy. "The nebula is affecting their ship worse than ours," Pete observed. "But why?" Amy had a theory. "Maybe it has something to do with being human. Maybe the nebula recognizes us somehow." As they watched, the ancient facility began to respond to their presence. More lights came on, and deep in the structure, something began to wake up. Something that had been waiting for a very long time. Admiral Kethavar's obsession with catching the humans had brought him to the one place in the galaxy he should never have come. And now, trapped in the heart of the Titan Nebula, both crews were about to discover the truth about humanity's place in the galaxy. The truth that the precursors had hidden for thousands of years. Jake and Amy rushed back to their ship as the ancient facility continued to wake up around them. The walls were now pulsing with soft light, and they could hear the deep hum of machinery that had been silent for thousands of years. "Pete, what's the status on our ship?" Jake called as they climbed aboard. "Good news and bad news," Pete replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Good news is I can fix the jump drive with parts from that Thexani ship. Bad news is it's going to take at least 6 hours. "We might not have 6 hours," Amy said, watching the Crimson Talon through the viewport. The Vorthak ship had landed roughly, and she could see damage along its hull. Kethavar isn't going to give up just because we're both stuck here. Jake made a decision. "Amy, you help Pete with the repairs. I'm going to explore this facility and see what the Thexani found." "Jake, that's dangerous. We don't know what's in there," We don't have a choice. If the precursors left records about humans, I need to know what they say. Jake took his environmental suit and headed deeper into the facility. The corridors were massive, clearly built for beings much larger than humans. But as he walked, the lighting adjusted to his presence, and he noticed that side passages were opening up that seemed sized for someone his height. It was as if the facility was adapting to him. After 20 minutes of walking, he found what he was looking for. A vast chamber filled with crystalline structures that glowed with their own light. In the center was what could only be described as a library, but instead of books, information was stored in floating holographic displays. As Jake approached, the displays activated. To his amazement, the alien text began changing, shifting into English before his eyes. "Welcome, human," a voice said in his mind. It wasn't speaking to his ears, but directly to his thoughts. "I am the keeper of records. I have been waiting for your kind to return." "Return?" Jake asked aloud. "But humans have never been here before." "Incorrect. Your species was here long ago during your medieval period. One of your kind was brought here by accident through a temporal rift. What we learned from that encounter changed everything." Images began forming in the air around Jake. He saw a human knight in armor, clearly from Earth's past, standing in this very chamber. The knight looked confused and frightened, but he was alive and unharmed. "Sir Marcus of York," the keeper explained. "He appeared here during one of our experiments with time. We meant to return him immediately, but first we studied him. What we discovered terrified us." "What did you discover?" The images shifted, showing the knight in various situations. Jake watched as the man was put through tests and challenges. At first he performed as expected for a human, but then something changed. When threatened, when pushed beyond his limits, he began to exhibit abilities that should have been impossible. He lifted weights far beyond normal human strength. He solved puzzles faster than our greatest minds. He even began to affect probability itself. Jake stared at the images. The night was now glowing with some kind of energy, and reality seemed to bend around him. "We called it the human paradox," the keeper continued. "Your species has the unique ability to exceed its own limitations when faced with impossible odds. Other species have fixed capabilities. You do not." "But that's impossible," Jake protested. "Is it? Have you not exceeded your own ship's capabilities? In the past few days, have you not performed maneuvers that should have destroyed your vessel? Have you not survived situations that killed trained Vorthak warriors?" Jake felt a chill as he realized the truth. Everything they had done during the chase, flying through the solar storm using the gas giant's gravity, navigating the asteroid field, it should have been impossible for a ship like theirs. "The first galactic law exists," the keeper explained. "Because when humans are chased, when they are cornered and desperate, they become something more than what they were. They tap into quantum forces that other species cannot access." More images appeared, showing other encounters throughout history. Every time an alien species had pursued humans, the results had been disastrous for the pursuers. Not because humans were violent, but because they became capable of impossible things. "But why?" Jake asked. "Why are humans different?" "Because you were designed to be," the keeper replied. "Long ago, we precursors seeded the galaxy with life. Most species we created to be stable and predictable. But Earth was our final experiment. We wanted to create a species that could grow beyond any limits, that could adapt to any challenge." Jake felt the weight of this revelation. "You created us. We guided your evolution, yes. You were meant to be the galaxy's guardians when the time came, but only if you proved worthy." "Worthy how?" The keeper's voice became solemn. "By choosing to protect others rather than just yourselves. Power without compassion is meaningless. We have been waiting to see if humanity would pass this test." Meanwhile, back in the docking bay, Admiral Kethvar was finally accepting the reality of his situation. His ship was badly damaged, his crew was frightened, and they were trapped in a place that defied all understanding. "Admiral," Zexhai reported, "the facility is responding to the human presence. Systems are activating throughout the structure. What kind of systems? Unknown, sir, but the energy levels are increasing rapidly. Cathvar looked at the human ship. Such a small, insignificant vessel. How had it led him to this place? How had it cost him most of his fleet? For the first time, he began to understand why the first galactic law existed. Back in the chamber, Jake was learning about humanity's true purpose. You were created to be the inheritors of our technology and our role as galactic peacekeepers. But only when you prove you fight for others, not just for yourselves. And if we fail the test, then the galaxy will continue as it has with conflict and suffering until another species evolves that can take on the responsibility. Jake thought about his crew, about the illegal mining operation they had discovered, about their desperate flight to safety. They hadn't been fighting just for themselves. They had been trying to protect others by getting vital information to Earth. What happens now? He asked. Now you choose, the keeper replied. I can give you weapons that would destroy the Vorthak ship with a thought. I can give you technology that would make humanity the most powerful species in the galaxy. Or what? Or you can prove that humanity is truly ready to be guardians. The choice is yours. Jake heard Pete's voice calling through his comm system. Jake, you need to get back here. The Vorthak are powering up their weapons. I think they're going to try to destroy us. Jake looked at the floating displays around him, each one containing power beyond imagination. He could take it all, use it to crush his enemies and protect his crew. But as he reached toward the nearest display, he hesitated. Was this really what it meant to be human? To take power and use it for destruction? Or was there another way? Jake stared at the displays of incredible power floating around him. Each one contained weapons and technology that could change the course of galactic history. The keeper waited silently, allowing him to make his choice. Through his comm system, Pete's voice was urgent. Jake, wherever you are, you need to know the Vorthak ship is in serious trouble. Their engines are failing and their life support is going critical. Jake's hand stopped inches from a weapon display that could have vaporized the Crimson Talon instantly. What do you mean? The nebula is affecting their ship much worse than ours. Amy thinks it's because the facility recognizes human neural patterns as friendly, but treats other species as intruders. Amy's voice joined the conversation. Jake, if we don't do something, Cathvar and his crew are going to die. Their ship is breaking apart. Jake looked at the displays around him. So much power, and all he had wanted was to use it to destroy his enemies. But Amy was right. If he did nothing, the Vorthak would die anyway. Keeper, he said aloud. Can these systems help the Vorthak ship? Yes, the ancient voice replied in his mind. But why would you wish to save those who pursued you? Jake smiled, finally understanding what the test really was. Because that's what humans do. We help people, even our enemies, when they're in trouble. He turned away from the weapon displays and moved to a different section of the chamber. Here, the holographic displays showed repair systems, medical technology, and emergency protocols. Show me how to stabilize their ship, Jake said, as information flowed into his mind. Jake ran back toward the docking bay. The ancient facility was responding to his choice, and he could feel systems throughout the structure changing their purpose from destruction to preservation. When he reached his ship, he found Amy and Pete staring in amazement at their instruments. Jake, Amy said breathlessly, the facility is sending repair nanobots to the Vorthak ship. It's actually fixing their damage. Through the viewport, they could see tiny glowing particles streaming from the facility's walls toward the Crimson Talon. Where they touched, the damaged hull began to heal itself. Not just repairs, Pete added. Their life support is stabilizing too. You saved their lives. On the bridge of the Crimson Talon, Admiral Cathvar watched in disbelief as his dying ship was restored to full functionality. His crew, who had been preparing for death, now looked at their instruments with wonder. Admiral, Zexhai said quietly, the humans did this, they saved us. Cathvar's worldview was crumbling. Everything he had believed about humans being weak and inferior was proving wrong. They had outmaneuvered his fleet, led him through impossible dangers, and now, when they had the power to destroy him, They had chosen to save his life instead. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the human ship." "Put it through," Kethvar said heavily. Jake's face appeared on the main screen. "Admiral Kethvar, this is Captain Morrison. Your ship should be fully operational now." "Why?" Kethvar asked simply. "Why did you save us?" Jake smiled. "Because it was the right thing to do. You were chasing us, yes, but you don't deserve to die for that." "The first galactic law," Kethvar said with growing understanding. "It was never about humans being dangerous when chased." "No," Jake agreed. "It's about what humans become when we're cornered. We don't just think about ourselves, we think about others, even our enemies." Back in the chamber, the Keeper's voice spoke to Jake's mind with something that sounded like satisfaction. "You have chosen correctly, human. Your species has passed the test." The displays around Jake began to change, showing not weapons but knowledge, scientific discoveries, medical breakthroughs, technologies that could heal worlds and bridge the gaps between species. "This knowledge is now yours," the Keeper explained. "You and your species are ready to inherit the role the precursors once held. You will be the galaxy's guardians, protecting all species from harm." "All species?" Jake asked. "Even the Vorthak?" "Especially former enemies. True guardians protect everyone, not just their friends." Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders, but also a sense of rightness. This was what humanity was meant for. Amy's voice called him back to immediate concerns. "Jake, Admiral Kethvar is requesting permission to speak with you in person." Jake returned to his ship to find the Vorthak Admiral waiting in the docking bay. Kethvar had removed his helmet, showing his scaled face and yellow eyes. He looked humbled and ashamed. "Captain Morrison," Kethvar said formally, "I owe you a debt that cannot be repaid. You saved my life and the lives of my crew when you had every right to let us die." "We all make mistakes, Admiral," Jake replied. "The important thing is learning from them." "I have learned much today," Kethvar admitted. "I understand now why the first galactic law exists. It was never meant to protect other species from human aggression. It was meant to protect us from human compassion." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Compassion? When humans are cornered, you become capable of impossible things. But instead of using that power for revenge, you use it to help others. It shames those who would harm you." Kethvar straightened to his full height. "I hereby pledge that the Vorthak Empire will immediately cease all illegal mining operations in the Kepler sector. We will make full reparations to the affected systems, and I will personally ensure that the first galactic law is taught to every Vorthak officer." Jake nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Admiral. That means a lot." As the two crews prepared to leave the ancient facility, Jake took one last look at the chamber where he had learned humanity's true purpose. The Keeper's voice spoke to him one final time. "Go well, Guardian. Your species' greatest adventure is just beginning." The journey back to human space was very different from their desperate flight into the nebula. The two ships traveled together, with Admiral Kethvar personally escorting the Aurora's Dream to ensure their safe passage. When they reached Earth, Jake's report caused a sensation. The discovery of precursor technology, the truth about humanity's origins and their new role as galactic guardians changed everything. Amy was promoted to lead the new precursor research division, working to understand and safely implement the ancient technologies. Pete became the chief engineer for humanity's first guardian ships, vessels designed to protect all species throughout the galaxy, and Jake became the first human guardian captain, commanding a ship that could travel to any part of the galaxy where help was needed. But perhaps the most important change was in how other species viewed humans. The story of how Captain Morrison had saved his enemy spread throughout the galaxy, and the first galactic law took on new meaning. It was no longer a warning about human danger. It had become a reminder of human compassion, and why that compassion made humanity worthy to be the galaxy's protectors. Admiral Kethvar kept his word. The Vorthak Empire not only ended their illegal operations, but became humanity's first allies in their new role as guardians. And whenever young Vorthak officers asked why the first galactic law existed, Kethavar would tell them the story of the day he learned that the most dangerous thing about humans wasn't their ability to fight, but their unwillingness to let others suffer. The galaxy had its guardians again, and for the first time in thousands of years there was hope for lasting peace among the stars.